After many years of studying books about the different stages of life, psychology and educational theory about how children develop and people develop, after looking at those and understanding them and then perhaps being a rabbi for many years as I have, I've come to believe that there are 5 stages of life. 5 stages. That means 5 stages at which when you come to the end of that stage and you go into the next stage, you have the possibility of discovering something new, of changing somehow, of growing in your awareness, of opening your heart in a special way. 5 stages. They all come in 20s. First 20 years, you grow up. How many are in their first 20 years? Second 20 years, you heal from growing up. How many are in their second 20 years? Now listen to me very carefully. By the time you're 40, get over it. It's very unattractive. You are what you aren't. You are what you're not. Your parents did. They didn't. You figured it out, right? Age 40, you ought to move on. And those of us who haven't moved on at age 40, we have a problem. Third 20 years. Legacy. Third 20 years, the choices that we make are building our legacy. Whether we go right or whether we go left, the path that unfolds before us, the path that is denied us, those doors that are closed right in our faces, the failures, all that evolves our story. And our story is one that, if we tell it correctly, is magnificent. But that 20 years, you are absolutely building a legacy. Because at the end of that 20 years, you will have built something in your life, and you will look back and you will say, this is what I've discovered. This is what I want to pass on. This is who I am. This is who I'm not. I'm okay with it. Next 20 years. Next 20 years are the richest years of your life. You've grown up. You've healed. You've built a legacy. And with that wisdom, you now have this wealth of understanding, of knowledge, of priority, of perspective. You understand what is important and what is not important. Hopefully, who's in that 20 years? It's good there, right? It's good there. Particularly if you're granted good health. It's good. Then there's the 5th 20, which really isn't 20 at all. It's rather a stage that kind of hovers over all the stages. It could come at the beginning, it can come in the middle, it can come in the end. It is a stage of life that hovers over them all, and it happens to every single one of us sooner or later. And that is when we come to the absolute awareness and understanding that we are not going to live forever. At some point in our life, mortality slaps us in the face very, very hard, and we wake up. And that may happen to us when we were a kid. It may happen to us when we are a young adult. You may even get so lucky as to happen to you in your third 20 years. But eventually, it happens. You look the angel of death in the face and you say, my life's not forever. And truthfully, though it can be frightening, and though it can be very, very sad, the understanding of mortality is truly a gift. Because when you realize that life is not forever, it helps you temper the arrogance that you have of your youth. And it enables you to walk softly with humility on this earth. There is a lot that I have learned over the years from those who are dying, watching how they die, and watching those who mourn them and how they mourn. Being able to bear witness to that is an enormous gift, because you go into what most of us fear and you realize great, profound lessons in life. There are those who fight against dying, whose diagnosis is terminal, and yet will rage, 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 as the poet says, against the dying of the light. Not give up even until the very last minute. Fight and struggle. Every ounce of their being struggles to live another hour, another day, another year. People who fight their mortality, though they know what is going to happen. There are so many examples I can give to you of this. But one that sticks in my mind this evening is my friend Charisse, who died 22 years ago. Rabbi, 4 years after our ordination, had ovarian cancer. And Charisse fought and fought and fought. And the last time I saw her, she took an airplane from California to Boston to come to a conference on, listen, healing. And she was supposed to give a session or two. And she was so sick from the tumors that she was not able to get out of her bed. We shared a room at the conference. It was all rabbis. And they came up to the room and they sat at her feet as she lay in that bed teaching about the power of healing. Charisse was so sick at that moment that she had to get an IV to go home on the airplane back to California. I was pregnant with our second child. Shiri is named for Charisse. It means sing to me, because her song was beautiful. And what do we learn from the person who struggles to live even in the face of their mortality? We learn that we must fight to live, that life is a struggle, that we must fight against complacency, that we must fight against boredom. Do not take your life for granted. Do not be bored with the circumstances in which you find yourself. Do not be complacent to the anguish of other people. Fight, 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 and rage against the dying of the light. What we learn from this person who struggles to the very end is that we must struggle to feel life at its fullest, at its greatest blessing. Blessing. And then there are those who, as they are dying and as they are sick and they hurt, they say, I can't complain, I've been blessed. I've been blessed. There are so many samples of that I could tell you about, and the one that reminds me that is straight in my heart right now, of course, is Zena, who many of us knew and sat in our choir and died just a couple weeks ago. And Zena, to her last breath, said, thank God I'm blessed. And it wasn't that she lived in la-la land. She knew. And yet managed to surrender to gratitude and blessing. And from this, we learn to live our lives every single day that we are granted another day of life with great gratitude and blessing in our heart. Be grateful. Be grateful for what it is that you have. Step on this earth with enormous sense of blessing for the wonder of the universe, for the rising of the sun and its setting. Be in wonder and gratitude and blessing. For the ability to help another's pain. Be filled with gratitude. For the ability to hug a loved one. Enjoy every single blessing that you have, because life is to be cherished. And then There are those who die completely unreconciled, as angry as they lived. People who were grouchy and angry and hurt and never smiled and fought and were cranky their entire lives. And they died that way too. And from this we learn that we must heal ourselves now. Whatever wrongs have had against you over the course of your life, let it go. If you didn't manage to heal that second 20 years, tonight is Yom Kippur. Heal right now. Ask God to come into your life, build a life filled with faith and with support and with beauty and with friendships, so that whatever hurts you so deeply, you can let go, because when you can open your heart and forgive, then there is a peace and a tenderness. And I know for myself, as I confess on this Yom Kippur, that the day I die, whether it's 5 minutes from now or 5 years from now or 50 years from now, the only thing I will regret in my life, are the times that I was unkind. Be kind. Figure that out. Figure out the blessing and the joy in life. And then there are those who die suddenly, tragically, too young, sudden, cut short. And the person, of course, I'm thinking of now is our friend David, who died very suddenly. And we thought that his legacy was going to be to build out the synagogue and to bring financial stability to the congregation and to governance, and we had dreams and we had thoughts and we had aspirations. And I know nobody plays president when they're little kids and dreams of being a president of a synagogue one day, but honest to God, if anyone would have, it would have been David. He was made for the job. But there are so many examples of people who die young and suddenly. And from them we learn that life is fragile and temporary and sacred and beauty. And as it turns out, David's legacy is much more powerful than any building could have been, because he teaches us to love every moment that we are alive. And if you think that this sermon is about death and dying, then you don't understand the sermon. Because this sermon is about living.